How often does marketing get told you're just making those numbers up? Guess what? Sometimes finance are as well, right? Anybody who's sitting there and saying they can forecast what's going to happen to your sales as a result of an activity, why are they using that to support selling toilet paper or coffee? Why wouldn't they be using that to run $1 trillion share portfolio?
You can't forecast. We have no idea what we'll wake up to, but there's scenario plannings that we can do to de-risk that.
What's your business sensitive to? What are those big opportunities you need to jump at? And what are those big threats you need to be ready for?
It feels like a marketer's job, it's a lot bigger than what it used to be. It's not just media and messaging. We sort of need to understand a lot more of the commercial side of things and bring that in.
Why is the customer making purchase decisions? Like, what are they doing? What do they want? Marketing is the only part of the business that has the right to own that needs to bring that knowledge into the business.
Marketing has never been more measurable, and yet for most leaders, it has never felt harder to know what is exactly driving growth. We have more data, more dashboards, more signals than ever before, but at the same time, the environment is shifting underneath us. Demand is less predictable, discovery is more algorithmic, and external shocks can change the rules faster than most plans can adapt. So today is not a conversation about brand versus performance, it's about what smart marketing leadership actually looks like when the old rules no longer hold. Paul has one of the vantage points marketers wish they had. He speaks to CMOs, CEOs, and CFOs every week, helping them understand the questions that matter the most when the pressure is high. Welcome, Paul. Glad to have you back in front of the camera.
Thank you.
Campaign Asia reported that 49% of APAC marketers plan to increase performance spend, while only 28% are increasing brand investment. But a lot of marketers, they always say that they do believe in brand, but the money keeps moving towards performance. So my question to you to start this podcast off is this a rational caution, or are people borrowing from the future growth to make this quarter look better? What are your thoughts?
I hope they're small. I hope they're tiny little brands, because it works well for small brands. Think about it, there's a pie of demand that sits there, right? You can harvest from the table for so often. There's a certain amount of people that are in market that are aware of your brand, that are open to buying your brand, and you can put a message in front of them. But that's a finite set. It's about 5% of people that are in market in any one week. You're only talking to that 5%. And at some point, you've maxed it out. Why not talk to the 95 as well? Big brands need to build demand rather than just harvest demand. What we see is if you start combining your performance with brand activity, 35% higher improvement in your performance marketing ROI straight away. It just works better, because rather than hitting a small market, rather than hitting a bunch of people that have been hitting with other search ads, and think about it, that performance marketing space is an auction-based environment, right? So limited supply, higher costs. It's a simple way that it works. If you start building demand and getting more people into there, prices come down naturally, but performance goes better as well.
I love that. So basically we're optimizing for efficiency, correct in saying that?
I don't think that we are. I think it's false efficiency. I think we're optimizing because we can see it, or we think that we can see it. We think that we can measure it. And so we go for it, and it pops off straight away in 1 week. You don't have to wait 12 weeks. You don't have to wait 16 weeks to be able to build it. But this is why so many brands that go purely performance or go purely online end up coming back.
And just to your point, we talk about that there's only 5% in market at any one time. And if you're only targeting them, you're only harvesting those that are ready now. So are we deferring that future possibility by not building the demand up top?
I don't think we're deferring it. I think that we're missing it entirely, and just foregoing any sort of revenue growth. I mean, if somebody needs to grow their business, this is a great way to make sure that you don't.
That's great. And I know we've worked with some clients in the past that, have had brand before and then sort of drifted back to sort of product-focused campaigns, and then through the modeling have realized that halo effect has gone. Can you shed some light or give some more examples of clients that we've worked with?
Yeah, we see extremes. Some clients who are saying 95% performance. which you'd argue is not a marketing mix at all. It's a toolkit, or it's an invoice from a supplier rather than a marketing mix. I think if we reframe it, sometimes like brand gets a bad name, particularly in tough economic times, right? I'm from a trade background. I used to think the same thing. This is something fluffy, something made by people who sit around on beanbags and sing Kumbaya. It's not something that fits in a commercial reality. So if we reframe it to think about broad reach, consistent messaging that's not going to go out of fashion, it's not something that we need to take out of market. The problem with price and product messaging is I've still got to be offering that price. I mean, think now, right, with oil shocks, everybody's having to put up their price. If we had some creative out talking about our $9.99 special, whoops, that's gone. Or like product features. Product features are great, but we hopefully constantly re-engineer the product, bring in new features, do new things, or something no longer becomes economic to be able to do it. So that product feature gone, there's your ad gone. Whereas if you've got a brand ad, or what we traditionally think of as a brand ad, it can keep going. It means that you can let that ad wear in and it starts getting some value, right? It's the beauty of it, of making an asset that you can use for 4 years or making an asset that you can use for 4 months. Which one's going to give you a better return?
I like how you frame that, of what is going to give you a better return, and looking at the longevity of it, of 4 years versus 4 months. I think that's really great for people to understand. And I want to keep going with that a little bit more, because we often talk about that it's not brand or performance, it's brand plus performance, and it's a multiplier effect. Can you sort of, again, what are the questions that the marketers should be thinking about when they're doing this, and how does that synergy work?
Yeah, it's a great shout, and it's a great, pushback as well. There's so little brand being done consistently, or at least it's done at such low levels. I often find myself fighting for brand. But if we come back to the harvesting building, clearly you're missing a trick. If you build all of this demand and then you don't do any harvesting, you're going to miss a trick, right? Your performance marketing should always be there to be able to harvest that demand that you've built and be able to do it efficiently. And if we think of, like trade activity instead, how many times have you seen guerrilla marketing come out and swoop in and steal it, right? How often somebody does some beautiful campaign, or they build something big.
It gets traction.
Do a launch and it's fantastic, and then somebody does a 50% off promo in that same week and steals all of the volume out of the market, right? It's exactly the same thing, harvesting versus building demand. You've got to do both. It's vitally important. And I think that we can get a little, focused on one thing and think one thing's the answer to it. It's very much doing both of them, but be thinking about when you do it. In Australia, Black Friday is a great one. Singles Day is potentially another great one. Where we see the success is having brand activity running before then. Now, a lot of people would say, don't do, like a deep promo, don't do something so spiky like that. The reality is do. It's what gives you efficiencies for the production run, right? If you don't have all of that product come through, then your unit economics often change. It's the thing that also delivers this massive lump of cash just before you go into Christmas. And the Christmas promo is there, so it funds all of that activity too. But by having that brand building activity running, say, the 8 weeks, 6 weeks beforehand, then you switch into your performance to make sure that you're harvesting all of it and you're doing it, not your competitors getting the benefit of it. It's about that combination between the two.
And I think that's a great summary for the marketers. It's the combination of the two, and to remember you've got to build the demand, then you can harvest it, and it's not one or the other. You have to have them interplay. And I think there were some really great examples there that people don't think about, or marketers don't think about so much, of putting the investment of brand ahead of those big ticket days like Single Days and Christmas, and the fact that it is a lead up, and the ones that win at the end of Christmas have normally planned out the brand building exercises for those key days from basically September, October, November in the lead up, and they're the ones that come off. I want to dive a little bit deeper now into brand building as we're talking about that. What marketers, because we've come from an era where TV really did help with a lot of brand building, and now we see digital is sort of inheriting a little bit of that, but maybe without the discipline. And I really want to understand, how do you see the role of TV now? How do you see the role of CTV? all of those type of things. Where's it going, and what's the new world look like from a brand building perspective when we talk to TV?
It's a great question, Nikki. I think we've seen so much fragmentation in media. We need to stop thinking about channel.
Okay.
I mean, it used to be there's the TV department, there's the radio department, the print department, right? And that was it. And then it kind of grew out. And then we had like an online team and, like an offline sort of team. And you could do that enough, right? And we kind of knew the rules of each.
Yes.
But now it doesn't hold true. Like we see something like YouTube, right?
Yes.
It does a great short-term job and it does a great long-term job. Even within that one channel, you can be doing like say 6-second bumpers, right? Which do great for reminding, or you could do really long-form content. Really, we're talking like say 3-4 minutes, where it's essentially like a little mini movie. It's something. It's a really interesting story around the brand. Not that you force the brand into. It's not like a 2 to 3 minute ad. It's an entirely different sort of storytelling. That's still within the one format, right? It's not even digital video. That's within YouTube digital video.
Yeah.
So I think that we need people to move away from channel thinking and to mix thinking, and more to be thinking now about how, what is the strategy that I'm trying to do? And so how do I use it? We've got a lot of those old rules and the rule of thumbs in mind, right? That moving pictures is brand building. And that's because it was TV.
Yeah.
And TV did that job purely because it had this great broad reach, right? It hit 80% of people with 3 channels. Like one by Saturday and Sunday, done. You've covered the entire marketplace. It's different now, and you need to be thinking differently. So strategy first and into mix. Because if we're thinking about digital, it used to be thought of as, the activation or the performance part of it, right? Of it was harvesting demand rather than building demand. But you can launch brands with digital. I mean, you definitely still want that extra support of like, say, out of home or, TV or radio or something, helping with some of that offline reach. But you can now. The problem with it hasn't been the channel itself. It's been how we've been using that channel. And I think it comes back to one of the things that used to always frustrate me was, people would tell me the ideal frequency is 1 for video, right? And you go, frequency of 1. And that's because it's an old TV rule. Go for a frequency of 1.
Yes.
Which was your planning of it. But you couldn't control that frequency ever, right? There were some people who are seeing it, 10 times.
True.
Right? You couldn't control it. On digital, you can. But we took that same rule and we applied it onto a channel, and we got entirely different outcomes because you stopped anybody from seeing any more of it, right? And to think that you can build a message or introduce something new with one message, it's foolish. It takes more than that. And the thing that scares me even more, I used to say to people, "Oh, you mean 1 per week?" And they'd be like, "No, 1 for the campaign." TV was never 1 for a campaign. It's 1, it's in the day, right? Where it comes out. So rethinking it, we've seen the ideal frequency for digital video, even for like maintenance, is more like 2.7, but for brand building, it's more like 4. So same channel, but because we're putting these rules of thumbs on it, you're missing it for even maintenance. But if you're thinking it from a strategy first, and what are you trying to do, and then from a mix perspective, you're going, okay, cool. Here's the screen with a video message, and I need to execute it differently because of what I'm doing, rather than just because of the channel.
That's great. I mean, let me just summarize that for all the CMOs and marketers that are listening. I think the key things that you're saying there is, number 1, strategy first. Stop treating it as in isolation, which I think is great. Number 2 is thinking about mix, marketing mix, not channels. And then, like you said, letting it run out. It brings me to my next one. And because I was interested, because you talked right at the beginning, you said there was 6-second bumper ones that were there, and then there was like 3 minutes and stuff like that. And I'm interested, like, would a 6-second bumper be brand building? Which brings me to my next question. Can digital and video and short and long form do long-term brand building for us? What's the difference between using the digital versus what we've used before? And my next point is, how do we get it wrong as marketers? Because I think we're still not getting it right.
The CMO Office is brought to you by Analytic Partners, the global leader in marketing mix modeling and commercial analytics. which turns data into expertise to help marketers make an impact in the C-suite. What kind of impact? Last year, every dollar spent on Analytic Partners, we returned $70 in incremental revenue. Find out more at analyticpartners.com.
Yeah, good question. I think there's two parts to it, though. There's brand building
Yeah.
and there's brand maintaining.
Okay, good. I like that.
Which isn't just maintenance, right? Because, let's step outside of so digital video with an auditory hook on it. So think of the McDonald's jingle, but like at the end, right? That jingle, it gets used across multiple channels. It's doing a brand job.
Yes.
Just that jingle, and like what, a second, 2 seconds?
Yeah, it's my
worth of jingle?
mental ability
Totally.
that remembers.
Golden arches on screen.
Yep.
Picture. It's doing a brand job.
Yes.
It's not building it. That was built 30 years ago.
True.
Right? But it's doing that brand maintenance job. So it's understanding those assets, which then means, yes, anything can be brand building or brand maintaining. Then how do you get that rich, memory structures and emotions behind it? Look, that is probably more moving pictures is what we've seen. Moving pictures can be anything on any screen, on any channel. It can be on a connected TV. It can be on your mobile. It can be on an iPad. It can be on a linear TV. So 100% it can be. If we're thinking about where it goes, then this is where it gets really exciting, right? Because we want brand building. We want to be premium. So maybe this is where you get into SVOD, some of the streaming channels, and you are up with really beautiful, well-produced dramas.
Yeah, I know. Some of them
Or like say, you're on, what was one of the biggest TV programs of the last 5 years? Yellowstone. You're there in Yellowstone. You get, the benefit of being associated with it. You get all of that impact. It's really high impact.
Yep.
It's more expensive than other options. But if you're doing brand building, what you're trying to do is build. That's inherently more expensive and harder to do. But you do that first and then you switch to something else.
I really love
all those options are there.
Yeah, I love that. I think marketers need to, again, come with a mindset. That's a great way that you position it. It's brand building or it's brand maintenance is very key on that, which is really, really good. So Analytic Partners has shown that brand marketing outperforms performance by 80% of the time. But why do you think behavior suggests otherwise? Like, it does outperform, but as marketers, we still keep reverting back. Why? Why do we do that?
Because we're scared and because we've got pressure from other departments. If you think about it, both things drive the same amount of volume, potentially. Brand building is a skyscraper on its side. Price and promo is really obvious, right?
Yep.
All of the impact of that product or price or promotional message happens in 4 weeks. A brand campaign pays off over 2 years.
Yeah.
But spread over 2 years. It's harder to see with the Mark 1 eyeball. You can often see the other activity with Mark 1 eyeball, or, and here's an unpleasant truth, it's associated with a price promo, and a price promo gives you a massive spike, or, like a product introduction, and that gives you a massive spike. As marketers, we can say, hey, that was actually me. I was part of that. And so, you can see it easily there, and you can claim that you were part of it and take some of the success. Brand building doesn't spike out like that. It's not so easy to be able to claim the success.
I think that's a great example of how we claim success. Are there any others that you've seen that marketers have often claimed success over, where from a modeler you look at it and you're like, well, it's not only that, like it's the end point and it's what, captured the demand, but it's not really what the whole thing came from.
I have one right at the moment where a client, hand on heart, was telling me that 4% lift in sales year on year was because of their new pack design. I got the new and the old one and I couldn't tell how they were different, let alone that driving a sales uplift. But do you know what else happened around the same time?
What?
A competitor got delisted.
Ooh, okay.
Which one do you think drove the sales? The fact that people couldn't buy that other pack and they had to buy something else or exit the category, or this new pack design? Those sorts of things are in abundance. I think
I love that. I want another one. That's a great one.
Well, but the bigger problem I think though still is, and the one that I think everybody's suffering from at the moment is less when do marketers claim the success, and it's more when do marketers get the blame. And it's when sales are going down. It's never during an increase, right?
And that's the thing. We always get the blame. And, I remember UPS always, like, the service was delayed 2-3 days, COVID, strikes or anything like that. But then you looked month on month, quarter on quarter, the sales will be down. They're like, well, what are you doing about it? Let's just cut your budget. Yes. And that's standard. I think a lot of marketers are in that position.
Yeah, well, we're actually showing it's an awkward conversation at the moment where we can see marketing improve its performance, but total sales are down. And that comes back to that grim reality, right? Where, I view a lot of award submissions.
Yes.
And we often see things with like, hey, we did this campaign and we got a 3,000% uplift. How great are we? The reality is marketing's driving somewhere between 5 to 15% of sales for most brands, right? You're never getting a 3,000% uplift.
No.
But that 5 to 15% is because, one, your budget's too small. And two, it does mean that marketing can be going up whilst total sales are going down. You just need the ability to measure everything. So not just, like marketing, you need to measure the entire business so you can see all of the drivers so that you can say to people, the economy's gone down. We took price up. That's why volume's down.
Yep.
Marketing's not able to offset all of those things, or at least not many marketers are given the budget that would be required to offset those things.
No, I like that. Can you give the marketers another example of how you've come in and you've helped with that conversation? So, in previous conversations, they probably didn't have the credibility with the leadership team, but after working with you and the modeling, the result has been that they have the credibility, they get more budget, or it's moved in the right direction.
There was a fun one. We did a study for a client and came out with some optimizations and said, hey, this is how you should do marketing instead. And we built up a new marketing plan. And the CMO said to me, great, can you give me a forecast of what that's going to do for us next year? And so I forecast the marketing volume. She said, no, the total business. I want to see that forecast. And I said, well, we're going to need a whole lot more information. We're going to need to come to some agreement around what unemployment's going to be, what the economy's going to do. But I need to know what your pricing's going to be next year, like what products you're going to be selling, what we're doing with distribution, what we're doing with all of these things. I said, no worries. Go have a chat with finance. We just did the plan. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. So I went along, spoke to somebody. No, that person didn't have that information. Spoke next person. After about 15 people, I finally hit somebody that said, oh, no, the CEO told us what the number needed to be. And so we had to work it from there. There was no of these initiatives kind of like building up to it, which, is the ultimate frustration, right? Because how often does marketing get told you're just making those numbers up?
Yep. All
Guess
the time.
what? Sometimes finance are as well, right? It's not just us doing it. So we instead went, okay, cool. We went and collected all the information from everybody from the bottom up. And to everybody's horror, we went, oh, you're not going to hit the number. There's no way you're going to hit the number next year. And so obviously then everybody got together. We came up with a whole lot more initiatives and we were plugging them into the model to be able to say, would it hit? And finally we had initiatives and we were going to hit the plan.
Okay.
The cool thing about that though is it put marketing at the center of the business.
Right.
Because if there was any changes to anything or any adverse conditions, people go, well, are we going to hit the number or not?
Nice.
So rather than being peripheral, marketing didn't just have the credibility, they had the only forecast.
And I guess they would have loads of credibility if the number came from finance or the CEO. Now, I'm going to shift a little bit into algorithmic discovery because 39% of APAC consumers are already using generative AI. They're also using online shopping, especially in APAC. We love our live commerce. What does that change for the marketers? And I mean, does that change how we discover the brand? Does it change the journeys between, the 0 clicks because AI is involved? There's a whole lot of discussion because, as marketers, it's something new. So we have to talk about it. I know we've had discussions and you've got some great point of view because you've really sort of looked at the data. So I want you to take away the noise for the marketers and let's have a real discussion about this.
No pressure. Hey, this is an interesting one. I think that there's a fun angle on this that not enough people are thinking about from a marketing perspective. And that's from a creative perspective.
Right.
Because, I'd come back to your earlier question around all of the noise around this performance and chasing the short-term stuff.
Mm-hmm.
AI being in play and generative AI search means that you need longer term thinking, not shorter term thinking.
Yep.
We spend all of this time in what a great friend of mine, Ben Jones, says is the froth, right? If you think of the ocean, we're focusing on where the waves crash and that froth that comes up.
We are.
You could have a team of 300 people generating all of the social content each day. They'd be run ragged, right? Trying to come up with ideas for everything that happened today, everything that's on trend, the news, getting all of that stuff. But it's froth. It lasts for a day, right? Then there's still the traditional thinking of where you come up with, the brand positioning and with that sort of stuff, the creative, the longer form thing. That's still the key place to be. And if you understand that better, then you can make the froth from AI tools.
That's good because that's where I play.
There you go, right? So it's that thinking's more important. But what it's actually then meaning is the depth is becoming more important now.
Okay.
Because you need to take that thinking and take it longer term. You need to be thinking about how you can get into more conversations, natural conversations.
Yep.
It's not about, you posting something. It's about people generally talking about it. It's about your native content, your site becoming more important and more people going to it because that's where the tools are learning.
So it really hasn't changed from what we've been told for many years, that quality, consistency and relevancy is still key.
Yeah, but also getting it into people's conversations.
Right, okay.
I mean, it's genuinely scary how many of these tools are trained on Reddit because that's where the conversations are going. And that's what I mean, though. It's not necessarily about high quality.
Okay.
It's about enough people talking about it organically.
Okay.
Now, I'm not suggesting that you go down some of those Reddit holes in any way, stretch of the imagination. You still want some quality, so let me give that as a big old asterisk on the top of it. But it's about that part of it, which means you need to stand for something and you need that long-term thinking so you do become part of people's habits, right? I mean, think of a McDonald's because people go there as kids.
Yeah.
They're talking about it rather than some pop-up burger chain.
Yeah, that's true. And what about the technical side of things? Because we've had this discussion before. When we talk about when you take away a lot of the clicks, a lot of the marketers might be in a bit of a panic because all of a sudden their search results don't look so great and they relied on their search budget or those numbers to really make them look good in marketing. We like it because it shows that attribution sort of is flawed. But when we talked and we dived a little bit deeper, you sort of indicated, well, we shouldn't be overly concerned other than the metrics for reporting because ultimately the low intent volume is coming out, but the high intent, people that actually want to convert, that are there that you want to pull them through, were actually there. Can you maybe explain that a little bit more for the marketers?
Certainly. And this is where I make no friends in the search community. But there's a whole lot of overclaiming going on there, right? There's a whole lot of clicks that are navigation that aren't genuine activity. I mean, I don't know if you've typed some things into a search and you've got your shopping ad up the top, then you've got your paid link search, and then further down you've got the organic one, and we're playing click bingo. Right, rather than it genuinely being something that's driving that activity. So we do see a lot of the chaff disappearing. And what we're seeing now is the genuine things that move. Now, what will that mean? Higher cost per clicks? Yeah. Will it mean lower genuine incrementality from search? Nowhere near as much. You'll see less claim clicks. You'll see less traffic coming through, for sure. But the actual genuine incremental volume driven by search, it's not going to be as affected as much, at least in the short term.
Okay, that's good to know. So it's actually a positive, really, in the way that it's moving forward. That's great. All right, I'm going to switch things up a little bit. We're going to talk about some black swan events because, we tend to have quite a lot of them in our world, unfortunately, at the moment. And we've come through, we've had those events such as COVID and now we have, unfortunately, the conflict in the Middle East. But what should marketers do first when the ground shifts? Because I think there's a lot of uncertainty, and this is the problem that marketers have. Coming back to your point of when sales dip, we get blamed for everything. When there's a crisis, all of a sudden we're brought in. but we don't actually have a lot of that data. So what are some of the signals they should be looking for first? What are some of the questions they should be asking first? What can they do?
This almost sounds facetious, but actually it was key to success in COVID, and a lot of people didn't do it. Think about what the natural demand of your product's going to be.
Can you explain a little bit more for the marketers? What do you mean by that? What should they be thinking about?
So there was product. So if your natural demand drops, your immediate ROIs are going to drop. And you're going to take a hit. So you might be thinking you should reduce spend, right?
Yep.
So during COVID, things that would have a natural drop in demand during COVID lockdowns, spin class subscriptions.
Oh, yes.
Probably lower. Getting together and sweating wasn't happening. Those sorts of things that are naturally not going to work for you, great. But instant coffee. Yeah. Nobody wanted to drink the stuff, but during COVID, because you had a relationship with your barista, you knew the best cafe to go to. You're not allowed to go to that barista. Suddenly, there's an increase in natural demand for that product.
Yep.
Think about streaming TV services. Huge surge in demand for that. So just be thinking about, okay, because this has happened, what's likely to happen to us? I mean, current situations going on. Thinking about as prices of petrol or gas increase, what's that going to do for my product? Pretty easy to think about, and immediately then go for it, because those clients who held their nerve and kept advertising during COVID won huge, because the natural inclination of finance was crisis, cut cost.
It always is. We always want to cut costs. And, based on your conversations that you're having with the CMOs now, and I've seen some of them come through, what are some of the questions that they're really asking you? I mean, some of the ones that I see is that pricing's under pressure. Do we advertise? Do we pull performance? What do we do? We've talked about this, so let's give some more meaty advice to what they really should be doing. Let's tackle price first, and then we'll tackle, should they be pulling back, if they're a winner or a loser. So you talked about the category. First, number one, figure out whether you're going to have more demand or less demand. But let's talk about price now, because that's an interesting one, and we talk about relativity on that one.
Sure. Your price matters less than what you think.
Right.
Your absolute price doesn't really matter. It's all about price relativities.
Okay.
So literally just be thinking what we think the market's going to do and game it. And I think that, kind of comes back to this whole idea of simulate, rather than just go for it. But if you put your price up, it could be okay. It depends what your competitors do. So be really dynamic. Be watching what the rest of the market's doing. I mean, if the absolute price mattered, I would never buy any products anymore, because I used to be able to buy milk for 20 cents.
Yep.
That does not cost that anymore. You know what I mean? It's now dollars. So it's the relativity of every other option that matters far more. Be thinking about that and game that. It's exactly the same as COVID. When advertisers cut spend on to zero,
yes,
they lost. Even if you cut your advertising by half, you won.
Because
you're doing so much more than somebody who's doing zero. It's the relative amount that matters more than the absolute amount.
And two things there. So I think when it comes to relative, we talked about this as well, that, it's in the category, and it's not just about your competitors, but it's also about the brand equity you built up in the past. So if you have a bit more brand equity and you weren't around, what does that do? People care or not? Versus if you are one of those ones that they still want, will they pay a little bit more if you're still within, that sort of relative to your competitors?
It is. There's also the physical availability.
Yep.
If you're there,
okay,
you can be bought.
Yep.
I mean, it's an interesting discussion I'm having with my US colleagues at the moment. They're saying, what's the price of petrol like in Australia? And I'm like, I've got no idea. I can't buy it.
If you could, you'd pay.
It's run out. So there's that step first,
yep,
which kind of comes back to that whole, demand perspective. But yeah, I mean, a stronger brand can maintain a price premium. You can get people to still do it. You can get people to continue to do the habit. And, do you have the ability to be able to harvest a little bit? Yeah, definitely. That option exists if you're still available. If you're still there in the market. We kind of saw that during our COVID, right? With, in Korea, there's a few factories that make a lot of the chips for
Yes.
every bit of hardware and software in the world, right? So you're bartering and trying to win to get the chips for your printer instead of it going into a car or a plane somewhere else in the world. That meant that there was massive availability issues across a whole range of products. So if you're the only one who can sell it, obviously, reflect that in pricing. Does that mean that you need any performance media? Exactly. No, you don't need any performance media. The demand's going to be harvested by availability.
That was going to be my question, when there's, because that will be the thing, right? The supply chain has been disrupted. Do I just pull, and my question to you is, okay, I pull my performance, but do I also pull my brand?
Definitely not. You need to keep some of it. You need to cut some for sure.
Right.
Cost control, you need to, see you being doing the right thing by the business. But once again, it's a relative thing. There's a game to be able to get excess share of voice. Right, more share of voice because everybody else cuts.
Yep.
You don't need to increase to do it often in these times, and that's what we saw during COVID. Huge wins in share of voice for marketers when they were still cutting their spend overall. So keep some brand, bring it down, but watch what the market's doing, and then go. Maybe you can bring it down some more. Maybe you need to increase it, but keep some form of always-on brand messaging. That's vital because you can actually lose, you said before about the brand equity, you could lose your brand equity. You could lose the things that you're known for as a brand.Maybe people think that you're the one that's really convenient. You're the one that's easy to use. Somebody else can come in and steal those attributes.
They can. And we have a stat, which I can't remember off the top of my head. If you go dark as a brand, it definitely costs more to get back to normal. Twice as much.
Takes you twice as long to get back. Twice as long to get back, or you've got to spend twice as much.
Okay, so if you're a brand that goes dark, it takes you twice as long to get back, or twice as much, or double the spend to get back. So really, like you said, you already had the budget there, you should decrease it, but keep spending and keep the brand in. If you need to cut performance because you don't have the product, cut
it'll
performance.
Be harvesting. Think about it as building and harvesting. You always need to be building demand.
Yep.
Do you need demand in 10 years' time? Yeah. Right?
Yes.
Like that's always.
If you want to be around in 10 years,
exactly.
you do.
You always need to be doing that. You might not always need to be harvesting because you might be getting it anyway.
Okay, that's a good point. I like that.
Yeah, but it is key, right? In a current environment, if you go, we're just going to cut for 4 weeks.
Yes.
That's 8 weeks to get back.
Or double the money.
Yep, but that's a whole quarter gone just because you decided to cut for 4 weeks.
I know. It's ridiculous that, isn't it? If you think about that, like just saving. I remember we did this at UPS. They only did it once and then they never did it again because we ran a similar situation where they went dark for, I think, 3 months. Took us a long time to come back.
Yeah, right.
And then they never did that again.
Yeah.
I totally understand that. Before I move on, I sort of want to say, with all this uncertainty, it really comes down to, I guess, how do marketers make good versus bad decisions? It's about that decisioning in uncertain times. And we talk about this a lot about scenarios. It's not about forecasting because you can't forecast. We don't know what certain people are going to do in politics. We have no idea what we'll wake up to, but there's scenario plannings that we can do to de-risk that. And I want to understand that a little bit more. As a top marketer, what do you see them do and how do they scenario plan? How does that work?
Run loads of different scenarios so that you can understand the sensitivity of everything. I mean, anybody who's sitting there and saying they can forecast what's going to happen to your sales as a result of an activity, I mean, let's be real. Why are they using that to support selling toilet paper or coffee? Why wouldn't they be using that to run $1 trillion share portfolio?
Yeah.
Like it makes no sense whatsoever. Where these tools are really good is being able to show you what happens if.
Yep.
Because then as those conditions are happening, you know how to respond to it straight away. But you also know those things that have the biggest impact on your business. So you can start building some protections for them if it does happen. Or indeed, from an upside perspective, if something happens, as soon as you think it's emerging, you can jump on that opportunity and make the most out of it. But it's about all of the simulations, what's your business sensitive to? Mm-hmm. What are those big opportunities you need to jump at? And what are those big threats you need to be ready for?
I think that brings me to one of my final questions, and that, listening to all of this, it feels like a marketer's job, it's It's a lot bigger than what it used to be. It's not just media and messaging, and especially what you talked about that. We sort of need to understand a lot more of the commercial side of things and bring that in. And my question to you is, as a CMO, as a leader, as a marketer or up and coming, what should they be aware of? Like, what do they need to know when they're talking to the CFOs? What gives them that credibility and what gives them the right to make sure that they can get growth on the table, not just clicks and likes?
They're supposed to be the voice of the customer, right?
True.
I mean, that's what us in marketing are.
Yep.
We are the voice of the customer.
Yep.
Where does growth come from? The customer, right? So ultimately, as long as you stay true to that and you have that as the core, go through from it. And not just, does the customer like your product, but
Yep.
why is the customer making purchase decisions? Like, what are they doing? What do they want? Marketing is the only part of the business that has the right to own that needs to bring that knowledge into the business. Otherwise, you're just internally focused. You're cost-cutting your way to glory. When did that happen? It's about thinking outside, and I think if you bring that in and you bring it in the language of finance,
Yep.
then you're golden. Then you see it. It's like the example I gave you before of having the tool of saying that's what all of your initiatives are going to do to be able to drive growth in the business. It's a capability that exists. It's many providers out doing it. Obviously, none as good as us. You should definitely do it with us. But there are many choices out to be able to do
Yep.
it. And marketers should definitely be leaning into it
Yeah.
to be able to do it. Now, it's not just about like modeling tools. There's loads of information that's out there from qualitative research, from tracking, from everything. But understand your customer and then frame that customer back into terms that finance can understand. How many sales are going to happen? The timing of those sales, and the different, margin opportunities around those customer groups, and then what they want coming forwards in the future. Does it need new product? Does it need new distribution channels? And what are the costs of those? So, framing those sorts of challenges are vital to the success of every business.
They are, and I think just to sum up, even right back at the beginning, you sort of started with marketers need to rethink, about not just channels in silence, a channel mix. What is the mix that they're doing? And then bringing in all of these external factors that they're doing. And like you said, working with proper measurement providers. Obviously, we prefer it's us, but, like you said, there's lots out there. And, as a small step forward, at least going in the right measurement progression rather than staying and just, putting their head in the sand. If there was one thing that you would tell marketers to stop doing immediately for 2026, what would it be?
Attribution.
Explain so not everybody, we didn't go into depth about that. So they're in like 2 lines, explain to them why they should stop doing that.
It gives credit to things rather than looks to what's driving sales. You don't want to be looking backwards, giving a credit to something. You need to understand what's driving sales and what's going to give you more. Attribution doesn't do that.
Excellent. And what's one thing they should double down on, even under pressure?
Value creation, and value creation. And I think that there's an element to that that's measurement. There's an element to that that's cultural. And I think that most marketers are missing the cultural element to that. You need to be able to allow people to take risks and fail. Don't fail with exactly the same mistake, and don't take a long time to fail. So fail fast and learn.
Yep.
Because in everything, right, there's an upside and a downside on it. So every failure, quite quickly, you go, okay, what do we learn? What can we apply and make better going forwards? But you need that environment where people can do it, because otherwise you're not learning, you're not growing. If you have an environment where you have to come and explain yourself, you're terrible, promise me you're never going to do this again. Whereas, little Tommy, you did really well, you get a gold star.
Yeah.
Nobody's going to be taking risks, you're not going to be growing.
Yeah.
So even though it's tough environment, have that culture where people can
Take risks.
grow.
Yeah.
Because if you're not going to take risks, you're not going to grow.
No, I know. I when I was at UPS, when we used to ideate, I used to tell my team, take your UPS hat off.
Yeah.
We have to think outside the box now, because it would always come with the but, because of all the red tape that would come in that. And I think that's really good advice for marketers. Great. So we're almost at the end. I want to finish on a fun question. You're based in Sydney. We made you come up to Singapore, come visit us, and then you're off to Shanghai. What's your favourite food in Singapore? Singaporeans, we love our food. So what's your favourite food here?
Anything with a lot of chili in it, to be honest.
Oh, you did have chili yesterday as well.
Yeah. I love spicy food. So yeah, definitely here. There's a few more options for it, which is fantastic.
Awesome. And next week you're off to Shanghai to see our office in Shanghai. What are you looking forward to eat there?
That's an interesting question. Eating there, like the team take me to some wild places.
Did not know that.
Yeah. So I have tried many fantastic things over there. My request is always tell me after, because I don't want to prejudge it. Because I'll tell you, I think snake is fantastic.
Oh, okay.
That would have been my reaction if they told me before. But I ate it, went, that's amazing. What is that? Snake. And I was like, oh, probably wouldn't have enjoyed that otherwise. So yeah, that would be my top tip. Try things first.
See, this comes from the modeler. Test and learn, try,
exactly,
experiment
right.
out. Just don't want to know all of the data until the end, and then I'll come to a conclusion.
Yeah, exactly.
Wonderful. Well, thank you, Paul. Paul is the Managing Director for Asia and Australia in Analytic Partners, has a wealth of knowledge, and we really appreciate you coming on today. So thank you so much.
Cool. Thank you.
If you enjoyed this podcast, don't forget to like and subscribe to our weekly newsletter, the-cmo-office.com, and I'll see you next time. Thanks.